The name Adam is derived from the Hebrew word Adar, which means earth or ground. This etymology is significant because Adamar can specifically refer to dark or fertile soil, often found in regions with rich dark earth. The implication here is that Adam, the first human created by God, could be symbolically linked to this dark earth, suggesting a darker complexion. Genesis 2:7 states, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." The dust of the ground. In this context is Adamar, further reinforcing the connection between Adam and the dark. Fertile earth in ancient Hebrew culture, the symbolism of dark earth was associated with fertility, life, and sustenance. This connection is not merely linguistic, but also cultural, as the dark, fertile soil was essential for agriculture and survival. Therefore, Adam, being created from this substance, highlights his intrinsic link to life and productivity, attributes often metaphorically associated with darker skin tones. Moreover, archaeological and historical evidence points to early humans in the region where these biblical events are believed to have occurred, likely having darker skin. The cradle of civilization, often located in parts of Africa and the Middle East, was home to people with varying shades of brown skin. The question of Adam's skin color has been a subject of theological debate and controversy for centuries. Various interpretations and perspectives have emerged, each with its own historical, cultural, and doctrinal implications. These views are shaped by a combination of scriptural exegesis, historical context, and evolving understandings of race and identity. Medieval Christian theologians also grappled with the question of Adam's appearance, for instance. The early church father Austin of Hippo, in his work, The Literal Meaning of Genesis, delved into the symbolic and allegorical meanings of biblical texts, but did not explicitly address Adam's skin color. However, Augustine's African heritage and the diverse Christian communities in North Africa during his time suggest a recognition of racial and ethnic diversity in early Christian thought. In contrast, during the Enlightenment, European scholars began to interpret biblical texts through a more literal and scientific lens. This period saw the rise of racial theory that often reflected and justified colonial and imperial agendas. Some scholars attempted to link biblical genealogies to contemporary racial classifications, leading to interpretations that often marginalized or misrepresented non-European peoples. For example, the curse of Ham narrative in Genesis 9-20-27 was misused to justify slavery and racial discrimination, despite the fact that the curse was placed on Canaan, not Ham, and had no basis for racial differentiation. Modern biblical scholarship and theology have sought to rectify these misinterpretations by emphasizing the inclusive and universal nature of the biblical narrative. Scholars such as Cain Hope Felder and Renita Weems have highlighted the presence and significance of African and Afro-Asiatic peoples in the Bible, challenging Eurocentric readings of Scripture. They argue that recognizing the ethnic and racial diversity of biblical characters, including Adam, enriches our understanding of the text and its relevance to all humanity. The question of Adam's skin color also intersects with broader discussions about race and identity in the Church. The Black theology movement, emerging in the 1960s and 1970s, sought to affirm the dignity and worth of Black people in the face of systemic racism and oppression. Theologians such as James Caan argued that traditional interpretations of Christianity often marginalized Black experiences and perspectives. By reinterpreting biblical narratives through the lens of Black liberation, they highlighted the significance of African and African-descended peoples in God's salvific plan. In addition to theological debates, cultural representations of Adam and other biblical figures have also played a role in shaping perceptions of race and identity. Western art and iconography have traditionally depicted Adam, Eve, and other key biblical characters with European features reflecting the cultural and racial biases of the artists and their societies. These depictions have influence, popular understandings of the Bible, often reinforcing Eurocentric interpretations. However, there has been a growing movement to diversify these representations and acknowledge the multicultural context of the biblical world. Contemporary artists and theologians are creating and promoting images that depict Adam, Eve, and other biblical figures with a variety of ethnic features reflecting the global and inclusive nature of Christianity. This shift not only challenges historical biases, but also fosters a more inclusive and representative understanding of the faith. Another important aspect of the debate is the intersection of genetics and biblical narratives. Advances in genetic research have provided new insights into human origins and migration patterns, offering a scientific perspective on the diversity of early human populations. Studies of mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome Hay groups have traced the origins of modern humans to Africa, supporting the idea that the earliest humans, including the biblical Adam, would have had dark skin. These findings align with the scriptural and historical evidence of an Afroasiatic origin for humanity, reinforcing the inclusive nature of the biblical narrative. The controversy surrounding Adam's skin color also reflects broader societal issues related to race and identity. Debates about representation, inclusion, and diversity in religious contexts often mirror similar discussions in wider society. As communities become more diverse and interconnected, there is a growing recognition of the importance of acknowledging and celebrating this diversity in all aspects of life, including religious and theological discourse. Theological education and biblical scholarship are increasingly emphasizing the need for a more inclusive and representative approach to studying and interpreting Scripture. Seminaries and theological schools are incorporating courses on race, ethnicity, and the Bible, encouraging students to engage with diverse perspectives and interpretations. This shift is fostering a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of the biblical text and its relevance to contemporary issues of race and identity. Moreover, interfaith and ecumenical dialogues are also playing a role in addressing these issues by engaging with diverse religious traditions and perspectives. These dialogues are helping to foster mutual understanding and respect, challenging exclusivist interpretations, and promoting a more inclusive approach to faith and theology. These efforts are contributing to a broader and more inclusive understanding of the biblical narrative, one that recognizes and celebrates the diversity of God's creation. The question of Adam's skin color, while seemingly simple, opens up complex and multifaceted discussions about theology, history, culture, and identity. By exploring these debates and their implications, we gain a deeper understanding of the inclusive and universal nature of the biblical narrative, and the significance of recognizing and celebrating the diversity of humanity in our theological and cultural interpretations. Engaging with these issues also challenges us to reflect on our own assumptions and biases, encouraging a more open and inclusive approach to faith and theology. As we continue to explore and understand the diverse backgrounds and experiences of biblical characters, we enrich our own understanding of the Bible and its relevance to our lives today. Exploring the racial identity of key biblical figures reveals a tapestry of diverse ethnic backgrounds, often overlooked in traditional interpretations. Several prominent figures in the Bible are described in ways that suggest they had darker skin tones. One such figure is Moses, who married a Cushite woman. Numbers 121 states, Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. The term Cushite refers to the region of Cush, located in modern-day Sudan, and parts of Ethiopia inhabited by people of African descent. This suggests that Moses' wife, and potentially Moses himself, had dark skin. The Queen of Sheba, another significant figure, visited King Solomon to test his wisdom in 1 Kings 1:1-2. It is written, when the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relationship to the Lord, she came to test Solomon with hard questions, arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold and precious stones. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Historical and traditional accounts place Sheba in the region of modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen, both known for their dark-skinned populations. Furthermore, the prophet Jeremiah alludes to the skin color of people from Cush in Jeremiah 13:23. Can an Ethiopian change his skin, or a leopard its spots? Neither can you do good, who are accustomed to doing evil. This rhetorical question highlights the distinct and recognizable dark skin of Ethiopians, affirming their presence and significance in biblical narratives. The Song of Solomon. A poetic book in the Bible also contains references to dark skin. Song of Solomon, 1 bird. 5-6, describes a woman who declares, "I am black, but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar. Like the curtains of Solomon, do not stare at me, because I am worthy, for the sun has burned me." These verses celebrate her dark skin, which has been darkened by the sun, indicating her beauty and the acceptance of her complexion. By examining these key figures and their cultural contexts, we uncover a richer, more inclusive understanding of biblical narratives. The acknowledgement of their racial identities invites a broader appreciation of the diverse backgrounds that shape the stories and teachings within the Bible. The exploration of Adam's descendants and their connections with ancient African societies reveals a profound historical and cultural linkage. Ancient Nubia, located in the region of modern-day Sudan, and other African civilizations were highly advanced, flourishing around the same period. Many biblical events are believed to have occurred. Genesis 10:6-7 lists the descendants of Ham, one of Noah's sons, which includes Cush, the sons of Ham. Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan, the sons of Cush, Seba, Hava, Sapta, Rama, and Saa, the sons of Rama, Sheba. And Dedan Cush, often associated with Nubia or Ethiopia, indicates that the descendants of Ham, and by extension Noah and Adam, had significant ties to Africa. Nubia was known for its powerful kingdoms, such as the Kingdom of Cush, which exerted considerable influence over Egypt and other surrounding regions. These kingdoms were centers of trade culture and technological advancements. The Cushites mentioned in the Bible were known for their dark skin, as referenced in various texts, underscoring their African heritage. Additionally, historical evidence suggests that early interactions between Nubia and Egypt were extensive, with Nubian as holding prominent positions in Egyptian society, including military and political roles. This is exemplified by the 25th dynasty of Egypt, also known as the Nubian dynasty, where Nubian pharaohs ruled Egypt, indicating a strong Nubian presence and influence. Ancient African societies, including Nubia, played a crucial role in the development of early civilization. They were renowned for their architecture, including the construction of pyramids which predate those of Egypt, the Kingdom of Mao. Another significant Nubian civilization was famous for its ironworking and intricate writing system. The Bible also references Ethiopia in relation to its wealth and wisdom. For example, in Isaiah 18:1-2, it is written, "Woe to the land of wearing wings along the rivers of Cush, which sends envoys by sea and papyrus boats over the water, go swift messengers to a people, tall and smooth-skinned, to a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech, whose land is divided by rivers." This passage highlights the significance of Cush. Nubia, Ethiopia, as a powerful and influential region. By examining the descendants of Adam and their connection to Nubian and ancient African societies, we gain a deeper understanding of the intricate ties between biblical narratives and the rich cultural heritage of Africa. This perspective broadens our appreciation of the historical and ethnic diversity present in the ancient world. The depictions of Jesus and his disciples in early Christian art and historical records provide intriguing insights into their racial and ethnic identities. Early Christian art, particularly from the first few centuries, it often reflects the diverse backgrounds of these seminal figures influenced by the regions where Christianity initially spread in the earliest known artistic representations of Jesus, he is frequently depicted with features that align more closely with the typical characteristics of people from the Middle East and North Africa. The catacombs of Rome, dating back to the 3rd and 4th centuries, contain some of the oldest Christian art showing Jesus with curly hair and darker skin tones consistent with the Semitic peoples of that region. The Sinai icon of Christ Pantak crater, one of the oldest surviving icons from the 6th century, also portrays Jesus with a darker complexion and distinctive Middle Eastern features. This iconic representation reflects the ethnic diversity of the early Christian community and the likely appearance of Jesus as a person from the Levant. The disciples of Jesus who hailed from various regions around the Mediterranean are also depicted with diverse physical characteristics. For instance, the apostles Peter and Paul are often shown with dark hair and skin in early mosaics and frescoes. These depictions align with descriptions of the people from those areas, emphasizing their Semitic and Mediterranean heritage. Additionally, historical texts and traditions offer more context on the appearance of these figures. The early Christian writer Origen, who lived in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, mentioned that Jesus did not stand out in appearance from his contemporaries, suggesting that he shared the common physical traits of the Jewish people of that time. This further supports the idea that Jesus and his disciples would have had darker skin tones, typical of Middle Eastern populations. The influence of different cultures on Christian art is also evident in the way Jesus and his disciples were portrayed in various regions as Christianity spread in Ethiopia, for instance. Early Christian art shows Jesus and biblical figures with distinctly African features reflecting the local population. The famous rock-hewn churches of Labella, dating back to the 12th century, contain frescoes and icons depicting Jesus with dark skin, indicative of the Ethiopian Christian tradition. Similarly, in the Byzantine Empire, Jesus is often depicted with olive skin and dark hair, consistent with the appearance of people in that region. These depictions emphasize the adaptability of Christian iconography to the local cultures and ethnicities where the religion took root. By examining the depictions of Jesus and his disciples in early Christian art and historical records, we gain valuable insights into the diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds that shaped the early Christian community. This exploration not only highlights the historical accuracy of these representations, but also enriches our understanding of the cultural and ethnic diversity within early Christianity. The role of Black people in the early church is a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of Christian history. As Christianity spread from its origins in the Middle East into Africa and beyond, people of African descent played crucial roles in the development and expansion of the faith. Key figures and communities of African origin significantly influenced early Christian thought, theology, and practice. One of the most notable figures is St. Augustine of Hippo, one of the most influential theologians in Christian history. Augustine was born in 354 A.D. in Thaista town in present-day Algeria in North Africa. He was of Berber descent and indigenous people of North Africa. His writing, including Confessions in the City of God, have shaped Christian theology for centuries. Augustine's work addressed crucial theological issues such as the nature of sin, grace, and the Trinity, and his influence extends across both Western and Eastern Christian tradition. Another significant African figure is Athanasius of Alexandria, also known as Athanasius the Great, born in 296 A.D. in Alexandria, Egypt. Athanasius was a staunch defender of Trinitarian doctrine against Arianism, which denied the full divinity of Jesus Christ. His theological contributions were pivotal during the early church councils, particularly the Council of Ennobae in 325. Athanasius's work helped to define Orthodox Christian beliefs, and he is venerated as a saint in both Eastern and Western Christianity. The early church also saw the rise of the Desert Fathers and Mothers, monastic figures who sought spiritual enlightenment in the deserts of Egypt. Among them was Anthony the Great in Egypt. Christian, who is often considered the father of monasticism, born in 251 A.D. Anthony lived a life of asceticism and deep spiritual devotion, attracting many followers who sought to emulate his way of life. The monastic tradition he inspired became a cornerstone of Christian spirituality, influencing monastic practices throughout Christendom. Moreover, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian communities in the world, has a rich history, dating back to the 4th century. The introduction of Christianity to Ethiopia is traditionally attributed to Saint Phoenix, a missionary who became the first bishop of Axum. Phoenix, a Greek-speaking Phoenician, was shipwrecked in Ethiopia as a boy and later served as a tutor to the future king Aina. Under Phoenix's influence, Aina converted to Christianity, making Ethiopia one of the first nations to officially adopt the faith. In addition to these prominent figures, Black people played essential roles as missionaries, martyrs, and ordinary believers in the early church. The Acts of the Apostles recounts the story of the Ethiopian eunuch, an important official in the court of the Candace Queen of Ethiopia, who was baptized by Philip the Evangelist. This event, described in Acts 8:26-39, signifies the early spread of Christianity into Africa and the inclusion of Africans in the Nent Christian community. African Christian also made significant contributions to the intellectual and theological life of the early church. Tertullian, born in Carthage, modern-day Tunisia, around 155 A.D., was an early Christian apologist and theologian. He is credited with coining the term Trinity to describe the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and his writings laid the groundwork for later theological developments. Tertullian's works, such as Apologetic and the Prescription Against Heretics, remain influential in Christian theology. Another notable African theologian is Cyprian of Carthage, a bishop and martyr who lived during the 3rd century. Cyprian's writings addressed issues of church unity, the role of bishops, and the nature of sacraments. His emphasis on the unity and authority of the church was crucial during a time of significant theological and political challenges. The early church also saw the emergence of African Christian communities that maintained distinct liturgical and theological traditions. The Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, founded by St. Mark the Evangelist, developed a rich tradition of worship, theology, and monasticism. Coptic Christians have endured centuries of persecution and cultural upheaval. Yet their traditions and contributions to Christianity remain vital. Furthermore, African Christians were among the early martyrs who faced persecution for their faith, Perpetua and Felicitas. 2 young women from Carthage were martyred in 203 AD during the reign of Emperor Septimus Severus. Their story is recorded in the Passion of Saints Perpetua and Felicitas, an early Christian text that provides a powerful testament to their faith and courage. These martyrs are venerated as saints and serve as enduring symbols of the early church's struggles and triumphs. The influence of African Christians extended beyond the continent. Many African theologians and thinkers traveled to other parts of the Roman Empire, bringing with them their perspectives and interpretations of Christian doctrine. This exchange of ideas enriched the theological discourse of the early church and helped shape the development of Christian thought. African Christians also played a crucial role in the spread of monasticism to other regions. The monastic communities established by figures like Anthony the Great inspired similar movements in Europe and the Middle East. The principles of asceticism, communal living, and spiritual discipline practiced by the Desert Fathers and Mothers became foundational to Christian monastic traditions worldwide. In addition to their theological and spiritual contributions, African Christians were also involved in the social and political life of their communities. Many held positions of influence and used their status to advocate for justice and charity. For example, Pomus, an Egyptian Christian who founded communal monasticism, established a network of monasteries that provided social services, education, and care for the poor. The early church's integration of African Christians and their contributions underscores the universal nature of Christianity. The faith transcended ethnic and cultural boundaries, drawing people from diverse backgrounds into a shared religious community. The presence and influence of Black people in the early church challenge modern perceptions of Christian history and highlight the importance of recognizing the diverse roots of the faith. Exploring apocryphal accounts of Black people in the Bible offers a unique and insightful perspective on the presence and significance of African individuals and communities in biblical narratives. Apocryphal texts, often considered outside the canonical Bible, provide rich and sometimes alternative stories that highlight the diverse backgrounds of biblical characters. These texts, along with pseudepigrapha, add depth to our understanding of the cultural and ethnic diversity present in ancient biblical times. One prominent apocryphal figure is the Queen of Sheba, also known as Makkah, in Ethiopian tradition. The Kebra Nagast, an ancient Ethiopian text, expands on her story significantly, while the canonical Bible mentions her visit to King Solomon in 1 Kings 10 and 2 Chronicles 9. The Keb Nagas provides a detailed account of her lineage, wisdom, and relationship with Solomon. According to this text, the Queen of Sheba was of African descent and played a crucial role in establishing the Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. The story emphasizes her intelligence, leadership, and the significant cultural exchange between Israel and Ethiopia. One prominent apocryphal figure is the Queen of Sheba, also known as Mada, in Ethiopian tradition. The Kebra Nagast, an ancient Ethiopian text, expands on her story significantly, while the canonical Bible mentions her visit to King Solomon in 1 Kings 10 and 2 Chronicles 9. The Chaos provides a detailed account of her lineage, wisdom, and relationship with Solomon. According to this text, the Queen of Sheba was of African descent and played a crucial role in establishing the Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. The story emphasizes her intelligence, leadership, and the significant cultural exchange between Israel and Ethiopia. The apocryphal Acts of the Apostles, particularly the ACT of Philip, provide additional insights into the spread of Christianity in Africa. The Acts of Philip recount the missionary journeys of Philip the Apostle, including his encounters with various African communities. These texts describe Philip's travels to Carthage, a prominent city in North Africa where he preached the gospel and converted many locals to Christianity. This account underscores the early penetration of Christianity into the African continent and the active involvement of Africans in the early Christian movement. The Testament of Solomon. A pseudepigraphal text offers a fascinating glimpse into the diverse backgrounds of the people involved in Solomon's court. This text, attributed to King Solomon himself, describes his interactions with various demons and spirits, some of whom are depicted as coming from distant lands, including Africa. The Testament of Solomon highlights the cosmopolitan nature of Solomon's reign and the diverse influences present in his court, reflecting the broader cultural and ethnic landscape of the ancient Near East. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text that is part of the pseudepigrapha, also contains references to African peoples. Enoch 85b18 describes the vision of Enoch regarding the descendants of Noah, mentioning the presence of dark-skinned people among the various nations. This text, widely read and influential in early Jewish and Christian traditions, underscores the recognition of African peoples in ancient religious narratives. The apocryphal Gospel of Bartholomew. Another text, outside the canonical Bible, describes the Apostle Bartholomew's missionary work in Africa. According to this account, Bartholomew traveled to various African regions, including Ethiopia, where he preached the gospel and performed miracles. This narrative highlights the early spread of Christianity in Africa and the significant role of African converts in the growth of the early church. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. An apocryphal text focusing on the childhood of Jesus contains stories that reflect the diverse cultural context of the time. One account describes Jesus' interaction with a group of children, including those of African descent. This story, though not found in the canonical Gospels, illustrates the inclusive nature of Jesus' ministry. and the recognition of diverse ethnic backgrounds in early Christian literature. The Acts of Peter and Andrew. Another apocryphal text provide additional narratives involving African characters. These texts describe the missionary journeys of the apostles Peter and Andrew, including their travels to African regions. The Acts of Peter and Andrew highlight the apostles' encounters with African rulers and communities, emphasizing the spread of Christianity across different ethnic and cultural landscapes. The ancient text known as the Apocalypse of Elijah, part of the Putta-Gha, also references African peoples. This text, which describes the end times and the role of various nations in the final judgment, includes mentions of African nations and their involvement in the eschatological events. The Apocalypse of Elijah underscores the global scope of biblical prophecy and the inclusion of African peoples in these divine narratives. The Apocryphal Book of Adam and Eve. Another text outside the canonical Bible provides additional details about the early ancestors of humanity. This text elaborates on the lives of Adam and Eve after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden, including their interactions with their descendants who spread across different regions, including Africa. The Book of Adam and Eve emphasizes the diverse backgrounds of early human communities and the presence of African peoples in these foundational stories. The Syak Infancy Gospel. An apocryphal text focusing on the early life of Jesus contains stories involving African characters. One account describes the visit of African magi to the infant, Jesus highlighting the recognition of his significance by people from diverse regions, including Africa. This narrative reflects the early Christian belief in the universal nature of Jesus' mission and the inclusion of people from different ethnic backgrounds in his story. The Acts of Thomas. Another apocryphal text described the missionary journeys of Thomas the Apostle, including his travels to various African regions. The Acts of Thomas highlight Thomas's encounters with African rulers and communities, emphasizing the spread of Christianity across different ethnic and cultural landscapes. This narrative underscores the active involvement of Africans in the early Christian movement and their significant contributions to its growth. The apocryphal Prot-Evangelium of James, an ancient text focusing on the early life of Mary. The mother of Jesus contains references to African characters. One account describes the presence of African midwives during the birth of Jesus, highlighting the diverse cultural context of this pivotal event in Christian history. This narrative reflects the inclusive nature of early Christian literature and the recognition of diverse ethnic backgrounds in the story of Jesus' birth, the apocryphal history of Joseph the Carpenter. Another text outside the canonical Bible provides additional details about the life of Joseph the earthly father of Jesus. This text describes Joseph's interactions with various people, including those of African descent, emphasizing the diverse cultural and ethnic context of his life. The history of Joseph the Carpenter underscores the recognition of African peoples in early Christian narratives and their significant contributions to the story of Jesus and his family. The Apocryphal Acts of Barnabas. Another text outside the canonical Bible described the missionary journeys of Barnabas, including his travels to various African regions. The Acts of Barnabas highlight Barnabas' encounters with African rulers and communities, emphasizing the spread of Christianity across different ethnic and cultural landscapes. This narrative underscores the active involvement of Africans in the early Christian movement and their significant contributions to its growth. The recognition of Black people in these apocryphal accounts enriches our understanding of the diverse backgrounds and contributions of African individuals and communities in biblical narratives. These texts, often overlooked in traditional interpretations, provide valuable insights into the cultural and ethnic diversity present in ancient biblical times, highlighting the significant role of African peoples in the early Christian movement. In summary, the exploration of the presence and significance of Black people in the Bible, the homology of Adam's name, and the contributions of African figures to early Christianity reveals a rich and diverse tapestry of human heritage. These discussions emphasize that the Bible includes people of all races and ethnicities, highlighting the universal message of God's love and salvation for all humanity. In summary, the exploration of the presence and significance of Black people in the Bible, the etymology of Adam's name, and the contributions of African figures to early Christianity reveals a rich and diverse tapestry of human heritage. These discussions emphasize that the Bible includes people of all races and ethnicities, highlighting the universal message of God's love and salvation for all humanity. The theological debates and historical interpretations surrounding Adam's skin color, as well as the cultural and genetic perspectives, further underscore the importance of recognizing and celebrating our shared human diversity. The Bible teaches us that all people are created in the image of God, as stated in Genesis chapter 1:27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. God bless us all.